Hey, hi everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of Wednesday webinar. And this is the first webinar for our season 7. So yes, Wednesday webinar is in season 7. This time we will talk about the art, science, and the magic of Psephology. Uh, Let me go, Rian, can you go one slide down? Yeah, so basically the session or the Wednesday webinar is, there's a team which works behind the scene for the Wednesday webinar, which is me, Amitabh Mishra, who head Insights and Analytics India for Dr. Reddy, Sundar, Mukul, and Jayesh. We kind of work in the background with MRSI Secretariat to bring you monthly Wednesday webinar. And like I said, the topic this time is the art and science of psephology. Go down. Yeah, so this time the speakers are Yashwant, founder and director of Sea Voter. Yashwant, I'd like ask you to speak a bit about yourself and your experience with the psephology political polling.
Uh, I will just introduce myself first because I would like to be others to be introduced alongside. I mean, my name is Yashwant Deshmukh. I founded Sea Water in 1994, uh, right after graduating from Indian Institute of Mass Communication. And primarily, I am a journalist. That's my major. I learned polling. I learned market research. Uh, when I wanted to do this side of this activity, I was fortunate enough to be mentored by Sir Robert Worcester of Mori, who founded Mori. So it's been a good roller coaster ride since then, and going along. That's all.
Thank you a lot, Yashwant. Parijat, India Lead Public Affairs, Corporate Operation, ESG, CSR at Ipsos India. Parijat, can I ask you to talk a bit about yourself?
Yes, thanks for inviting me. This is an exciting topic, and I'm equally excited as my co-speakers. I started my career back in 1994 in market research and fell in love in that, and never gone out, never tried to go out of the industry. And I consider myself a researcher. So I've spent time, years on different aspects of market research, and for political research, it's about 15 odd years when we are doing the market research in and Ipsos being one global leader in political research, it had been quite enriching experience here. And even prior to joining Ipsos, in TNS those days, we did a pretty good amount of research. So that way, it's a very interesting field, and like many other fields of market research, is quite interesting. And I'm now looking at the social sector research as well, which is another interesting field and has some connections with the political research as well. So yeah, it's been a fantastic journey, and then fully enjoying.
Thanks a lot, Parijat. In fact, you gave a good idea. We will talk about in some webinar about social research as well. Girish Upadhyay, Chief Marketing Officer, Access My India. Girish, if you can talk a bit about yourself.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and thanks, Amitabh, and thanks, MRSI, for having me here. So, as far as I go, basically, I started in 2000. I started research, and I've been a researcher and a marketer in equal proportions, I would say. The company Access My India, we founded it in 1998. That is when Mr. Pradeep founded the company, and he is my mentor when it comes to psephology in that respect. We went into hardcore psephology, election forecasting from 2013 onwards. So it's almost 10, 15 years of psephology work for us. That's what we have been doing good till now. We have accuracy about 94%, which we want to continue. And thanks, Amita, for having this topic. I think it was a much needed topic in that sense. In the whole glamour of research, I think we forget this area, which is a very interesting area in that sense. So great, and thank you for having
Thank you.
this topic.
Thanks, Girish. So we have about 80 years of experience in psephology, combined experience of 80 years of, and lots of experience in this room. So let's me kind of go ahead and ask Yashwant this question. So what is psephology and what are the different parts of psephology? Is it only exit poll? Is it much beyond that?
No, exit polls are just one small part of that entire psychology gambit. I mean, basically, your subject title is very catchy one, the art and the science of it. The science part is pretty much the research that we all of us do in socio-economic or market research, whichever way. Survey science, that's the science part of the psychology. I think is pretty much the market research part of it, designing a good random probability sample, asking few questions, and at best getting up to the vote share in terms of electoral politics, assessment of the vote share. I think the art part of it is converting that vote share into seat share, you know, and voodoo part of it is saying that only I can do it right. So that's the only science and the art and the voodoo part of it goes. So any researcher, and I'm absolutely sure that Girish Upadhyay, everybody who is doing this would agree to this, that the science of polling, the science of research starts and stops at the estimation of the vote share in that way. If you are talking about exit polling, and the conversion of that vote to seat is not part of the survey science. That's a more of a arithmetic, more of, and every psephologist, every social scientist has, depending on the electoral system that person is working on, has his or her own way of extrapolating that vote into seat. And that is something different. We'll discuss it as and when we
Yeah.
proceed on this particular discussion. But
Thanks.
trackers,
Yashwant.
the polls, and the exit poll. Exit poll is just a small part of that entire gamut.
So, Parijat, now the question to you is it so what you would define psephology as, and what are the branches of psephology or the parts of psephology, maybe in India and globally followed?
It is fundamentally a science of studying electoral behavior, political behavior of now, like Yashwant said, that what do you do with that inside? Whether you go and stop at the vote share calculation or the issues related and stop there, or you get into the seat shares and all. So that depends on what you have set out for. So, in my opinion, it's definitely a hardcore science, a combination of different streams of science, like behavioral science, increasingly getting psychology is definitely, and the mass psychology. As we get to see a lot of technology coming in, that brings in science again, analytics, complex data integrations, because more and more as we are observing that single methodology is falling short in terms of covering the entire population, covering the entire sets of answers and the biases that you can encounter and like that. So multimodal is the trend, and there the complex data integration comes in. So this is definitely a hardcore science, but there is definitely one layer of arts in terms of deciding how much of which science to use for which purpose. And then, if I may put it like Deshant was talking about, I'd say the after share calculation, it's more science, less art. And then getting into the next step, it is more art, less arts. Um, there are a lot of experiments going on globally, and as Ipsos is operating, I think more than out of 92 countries that we operate, at least in 40 countries we have a psephologic practice or something or the other is going on on election-related research. That brings in a lot of insights with respect to the experiments going on, and that's why I talked about this multimodal thing. There are countries where you cannot cover the entire population. Like Ishan talked about a random sampling to really cover a representation of the universe that you are trying to do. But in India today, we have a big challenge of no one methodology can actually cover the entire population. And if you do a door-to-door, you won't be able to find people like you and me in this call, because the poor interviewer will never get an access to our houses like that. So multimodal is the norm, but that brings in a lot of challenges. Obviously, you need to know which one, to what extent, what weighting within each methodology, across methodology, and all those. But those challenges always, are much lesser. So the benefits out of those outweighing the challenges. So that's a big trend that we're observing globally, and also use of technology. The technologies could be even at the very basic and simple
We
level.
will, yeah, Parijat, we will get into technology part a bit later in the conversation. Girish, my question to you is, what are the methods and techniques used in political polling and exit polling? So the question is basically, and I'll, talk about exit polls, and most of the time people say that the seat prediction, it's all about seat prediction. Is it just about seat prediction, or does it go beyond that?
So, Amitabh, before I go to that question, I mean, the first one was is a very interesting question for me also in that sense. So, I will just, very quickly comment on that. So, for us, I mean, we clearly believe that, and especially because of what Parijat said, I mean, for us, it's a combination of art and science which creates this magic when it comes to political polling and forecasting in that sense. Why do I say that? So, we all know that India is a very complex country, 30 states, 22 languages, 100 dialects, whatever. So it's diversity at its, the way you can imagine it at its peak. So if you have to understand a country like India, and if you have to understand the needs of people in India, of course, science is involved. But beyond science, what makes it different is that what you're trying to do, you're trying to understand the heart and soul, understand the voter, what it needs and issues, what his likes and dislikes are, before, and that gives you the outcome in terms of, okay, whom he has voted for. Right? So more than the science part of it, I would stress that, okay, when it comes to psychology, it's more of an art, because it's a combination of understanding human psychology, sociology, his needs, and then coming out with an analysis and prediction. So that is the point which I just want to say. Uh, Now coming to your point in terms of methods and techniques which are there. Now, when it comes, and I'm speaking from our experience in terms of the work which we have done, right? We believe that there are three key fundamentals when it comes to election forecasting and this whole exit poll research piece. The first is to reach the right audience. And I spoke about the diversity which exists in India. So sampling is very critical in terms of geography, in terms of caste, in terms of gender, age, occupation. And the main goal always is to get a sample which represents the voting population of the state or the nation, depending on the election. So the first and foremost fundamental is the reach part of it. The second part, as I said, is to connect with the voters. We need to understand the complexity in terms of the language. We need to understand the number of political parties which are there in India. So, for example, there are about 8 national parties, there are about 50 regional parties, and there are more than 1,000, 2,000 smaller parties which are there. There are differences in terms of socio-economic differences, population density. So connecting with this becomes very important. The third, when it comes to fundamentals, is understanding. As I said, it's all about sociology. It's all about understanding what is the needs, issues, likes and dislikes of a person. And the whole idea when a field team goes is to gather this information from the ground beforehand itself, collating it, making sense out of the data, and then prepare a question and then going out and getting the feedback from the people. Because it's not an easy job for a person to open up and share the internal feelings with a surveyor in that sense. So in terms of techniques, yes, fundamentals are reach, connecting, understanding, and then of course in terms of technology has evolved in terms of most of the interviews happen through a CATI form in terms of telephonic interviews. Data analysis becomes very important part of it. But the key in terms of the method is the groundwork which happens and the whole rigor which goes behind it.
And the other question which I asked you, is it just about seat prediction? Does it go beyond seat predictions?
So, of course, there are two fundamentals when it comes to election polling. There is the vote share and the seat share. What is a vote share is basically uh, is and the holy grail for anyone is converting those votes into sheets in that sense. So the candidates with the highest number of votes is elected, which is the sheet share. So basically, what it tells you the number of seats won for every 1% of the votes which are secured. When it comes to election analysis, and we have all seen that basically election results are analyzed promptly in terms of vote share and sheet share. The party that wins the majority of the popular vote and the party that wins the majority of the seats. It is hoped that the party that wins the majority of the vote also wins the majority of the seats, but that is not always the case, right? There can be a difference when the vote share might not get converted to a seat share. And I will give you a small example, right? So, for example, if X party gets 40% of the votes, Y party gets 25% of the votes, Z party gets 16% of the votes, and others get 19% of the votes. But there is a tie-up between the Y party and the Z party. So, therefore, the combination becomes 41%. Therefore, the party having the highest vote share might not get the highest seat share. So these are the two most important things, and it's as Yashwantji also said, right? I mean, getting the vote share part is easier. Converting that into seat share is where maybe the science comes in.
So, Yashwant, do you agree? Do you have something to add on to this in terms of, you know, sorry, your voice is not clear, Yashwant. Sorry.
Totally from the science that whenever as a research product, I mean, even if you are looking at a market share of any product, look at it from that perspective, it depends on which universe you are trying to analyze it on. If you are saying that, okay, BJP, Congress, different parties are different, I mean, products, and the same product but different kind of brands, and you are looking at trying to pick up a market share of these brands on that particular product category, so the universe is all India, maybe vote share wise, you're getting polling about thoroughly random polling about 1500 samples. All India will give you within plus minus 3% of variation of that kind of vote share. But can that give you a vote share or seat share for Maharashtra? No. For that particular market share, you need to poll in Maharashtra. Can that tell you in Mumbai Konkan region? No. For that you need to poll within that much of sample within Mumbai Konkan region. Can that tell you a certain Lok Sabha seat in Mumbai? No. For that you need to poll in that particular Lok Sabha seat of Mumbai. It's like that. Smaller the universe, the larger the sample size. That's the age-old thumb rule. So if one gets to poll in all the seats and call each of the seat as a two-horse race, obviously that is pretty much science and the art. That increases the chance of getting not just the vote share but also the seat share correct. But imagine doing 1000 samples in all 543 seats. What kind of sample size are we staring at? And who is going to commission that sample size? Because unlike when we work in UK or US, for example, the variables that we have to deal, and Parijat can confirm this thing because he is literally representing a company which works in more than 90 countries. We are only working in about 6 of them, but whatever the limited experience that we have, UK or US polling comes really easy for us, Amitabh. How many variables are we dealing in US? Caucasian white, blacks, Hispanics, and then rest is all other clubbed as one, maybe few 2 or 3%, which are more important in some of the, East board and the West board and like that. In India, look at the variables that we are talking about. Forget about 20 languages that you are dealing. Forget about 5 major religions you are dealing. Think about the 2000 caste groups, and people do cast their vote in terms of their caste in that way. Vote the caste or cast the vote. That's the thing that we are dealing in India. the kind of variables are so huge that forget about learning something in one state and applying it on other. Even within one single state, within two different regions, Purvanchal and Western UP we are talking chalk and cheese. Within Western UP, how Hapur votes and how Noida votes are two different animals. So what we are looking at is something like 543 different universes if you are talking about Lok Sabha elections. We run trackers. We have been doing so for since 2009, a daily tracker in 11 languages. But all my friends in the West, they joke that your daily omnibus almost sounds like running a Eurobarometer. I mean, with the kind of demographics you are dealing with, and that's the fact. So it's a challenge. It's a huge challenge. Unfortunately, what happens is that people try to, and particularly being a journalist, I always end up criticizing my own fraternity more than anybody else. We just try to oversimplify everything just to create a headline. That's how media deals with the polling part of it and the numbers part of it. I think somewhere down the lane, as we grow as a democracy, as we make this art and science of psephology more common, demystify it, and look it from the researcher's perspective, this is all research. This is something which is Puritan. You can trust the numbers. If the numbers are correct, collected properly, there is a science to it. And demystify it by segregating what is not science, not science of it, not confusing with that, and going as per the way it has to be done. I think a lot can be achieved. This is a growing, budding science because we are a budding democracy. It's only 75 years, God's sake. I mean, comparing it to, the countries which have couple of hundred centuries as democratic history, and also almost like 100 years of history as polling. And the countries which are polling, Parijat does weekly polling in US for I don't know how many decades. Compare that to India. Girish would love to do a poll, almost on a weekly basis. Does he get a chance for the media? That's the question.
Yes, so what I understand, and I think I would advise my audience also to not look at only seat prediction, but also understand what goes behind the exit poll and what was the reason why a particular vote share or a particular, seat share happened. And because, yeah, like we discussed, results, what exit polls gives you today's seat in terms of in 48 hours, you will see the actual results. So it's not about getting to know seat share 48 hours before. It's much more about understanding why the voting happened the way it happened, kind of a thing. But so Parijat, I'm coming to you.
I'd like to just add one thing here in this discussion. That's a very good point that we're discussing, that political polling is not restricted to seat share, vote share, and opinion poll and exit poll. There are several other types of political research which globally is very popular, and we're doing a little bit of that. There is a concept of continuous tracking of issues, like what Yashwant talked about. In some of the countries, UK, US, we're doing for the last 5 decades. Every weekly data is available, and so that kind of things. There are a lot of longitudinal research that we do, pre and post, within the same cohort of the same sets of respondents, for that matter. How their political discourse has changed in pretty much every day, 7 days, like that. Because we all know a lot of them actually decide the day or the day before, right? So that there are such kind of things. Approval rating is another kind of political research which is very common in many other countries. We have only a few in India. Performance of parties, which can be an approval rating type, or it can be a different type as well. Parties, leaders, candidates, and also many of those kind of things we have globally by many good organizations who are continuously doing such kind of things. It's good that we have started observing things happening in India. I hope that those kind of things also gain a momentum, a better momentum. And not only that, we remain confined to a exit poll and opinion poll kind of things, including social media and all those things. Like, for example, we have one product called Political Atlas, where continuously for every candidate or every minister or the political leader, there is always a fusion of what the social media is talking about, what he or she spoke, what have been the reactions, and then how the approval rating has changed. So everything is available online, kind of a format. So those maturities are something, the faster we get into, the more interesting this field would be. And I'm sure the more and more researchers will get attracted towards that, because this is a damn interesting field.
Yes. So before I come to my next question, I wanted to ask one question which I have heard, but I don't know whether it's true or not, that lots of political parties also do commission researches to understand, but which is not published, but to understand, sentiments
Yeah,
among the
yeah.
voters, sentiment amongst and that happens in India as well, or
Oh,
it's a
yes.
global?
I mean, 90% of the political research in Ipsos that we are doing are not published because this is confidential for somebody or some entity. So we work with political parties, we work with individual candidates, because with this maturity in this overall market, the candidates are also coming forward and trying to understand, what's my chance and how I'm doing and so on. So we work with universities who do a lot of, longitudinal research or more academic research, because this political research has a lot of important space in the academic research, right? How the human behavior, societal behavior changes. So a lot of those happening which are not for public consumption, right? And yes, political parties and other entities are also doing, and those are not published.
So Girish and Yashwant, is it true for your organization as well in terms of?
Yeah, so there, for example, there are pre-poll surveys and there are post-poll surveys. So what exit poll is a post-poll survey. Once a ballot has been casted, you go to the voter and then ask whom did you vote for. And there are pre-poll surveys like the opinion polls, research work which happens for political parties, research work which happens to generally to understand what is the political sentiment which is out there. So yes, different brackets of what comes into the limelight is of course the exit polls part of it, because that is predominantly what is telecasted by media in that sense, and therefore it gets you the eyeballs. But there are, I mean, for us also there would be about 80-90% uh, of the work which we do, which is not out for, which is for private consumption of stakeholders.
Okay. And Yashwant, same.
For us, actually, it's a bit, the proportion is a bit reverse what Parijat has. I would love to have that proportion, by the way, Parijat. But 90% of our work actually gets into the public domain by virtue of, because our majority of our clients are either media clients or academic. So academic clients, the data takes more time to get into the public domain, but they come out in terms of research paper and other studies and so on and so forth. But as far as media clients are concerned, I mean, that data is very much gets in the public domain. We don't get too much of consultancy work in that the question, the original question that you marked. We used to do a lot, but as more and more we are focused on to socio-economic research, policy research, we would like to proceed further in that. In our daily tracker, we are tracking 76 items. Out of that, only 5 or 6 items are political. Rest of them are socio-economic, to assist the policy makers. So that part of work, which assists in good governance, if you look into that part and considering that it assists, eventually the person who is sitting on the chair is a politician. So yes, I mean, from that perspective, you can say that at the end of the day, it is political work, but we don't consider that. It is more of a policy research work in that way. What are the things that are working, the schemes that are working or not working, what is the public that needs to prioritize on different kind of outlays that the government wishes to do, or any party, in terms of forming their manifestos or the ideas of the governance, if I may say so. So those sort of things they get in, and big number of them actually get it through the academics in the West. Unfortunately, academic part within India is a big zero, very rare, and that too from established centers like IIMs and some of the academics or scholars in IITs or something like that, very rare. I mean, out of the 100 academic projects, I would say almost 96, 97 happen to be in the West, who are interested in India and South Asia at large, and they come up damn serious research. I mean, it's like considering, it's sometimes it's like, why didn't anybody do this before? It's like that kind of an eye opener. But amazing work that is going on, and that helps. That's what keeps the fun in.
So my next question, and that is, asking Parijat, so UK democratic setup is similar to India in terms of you vote for MPs and who then go and choose the prime minister, kind of a thing. Whichever party has the highest majority seats goes and choose the prime minister. While in US, it's a very different thing. You have majorly two political parties, and who then have a presidential nominees and who then go and choose the president itself directly rather than anything else. Yes, they have a senate and everything else, but the president is chosen directly by the
It's a
voters.
two-state. Yeah, president is chosen by the elected members, and that's why we had that strange situation in 2016 where he actually got the actual citizen votes. I think, if I'm right, 2.1% higher than Trump. So Trump got 46.1 and Hillary got 48.2 or something like that. So that way, if you see that, Hillary was more popular, but in terms of the electorals voting, where Trump owned by more than 10% margin in Hillary. So there's a peculiarity of this kind of system. But obviously, each system has its own challenges. The UK system, which is very similar to ours. But I would say, like echoing what Yashwant was talking about, an UK system, again, the number of variables are far lower than what we have in India, and apart from all the demographics and etc. Here, you cross the border of a state, the entire combination changes with different kinds of parties, with different kind of strengths in that state. In one state, there could be the leader; the other state, there could be obviously insignificant. And then you have those tie-ups and all. So it's just a theoretical discussion to compare US and UK and India have similar kind of system, and that's why from technological point of view there are similar kind of challenges. I would say we have a lot to learn from them, no doubt about it, because like Ashant said, they do, many of those Western guys, they do pretty gold standard research, and we know good political research needs money. It's a huge amount of money to really do a proper be it exit poll, be it any kind of research for that matter. And increasingly we are observing people are shying away from there, and that's why shortcuts and etc. happening in the industry. But they do a lot, and as a result, we get to learn a lot from them. On top of that, we put our own understanding, our general research understanding to know the complexities of the India and handle those, and all those things gets layered further on that. One another thing that I would say we are fortunate to learn from UK and a few other European countries as well as US for that matter, is that there is a strong culture of this entire psephology as the fraternity, and that's why for every election after that there is a thorough assessment. What has been the accuracy rate? What kind of approach has gone wrong. That happens because there's a great amount of transparency. All the polling organizations share details of methodologies and what they are trying to achieve, why they have adopted a particular methodology with an expectation to address this error, that error, and like that. And the post analysis happens on that, and tons of research paper gets published. We don't have that culture here, so we actually don't learn from each other. We pretty much hold ourselves within our own this thing, and that's why I'd say there is a need to share more, share in public domain. If I've done something great, and whether it has been 100% perfect or 99% perfect, whatever, we should be using it for the improvement of this fraternity, the industry, and sharing. The sooner we get comfortable in sharing that, the better it is. Good for the entire industry.
Great. So one question which I had, and which basically, we say that India, while India is India, we have 30 states, but people say it's as diverse as Europe. So yes, Europe also has those many countries. In each state is a different country. Could have been a different country if India would have been a continent, because a Bihar or a Maharashtra or a Gujarat votes very, very differently from, let's say, and similarly like Italy or Spain or something would vote diverse, or Germany would vote. So my question is, how difficult and easy it is to do a national election and a state election, and how
In India,
diverse in India, in India.
yeah.
So
Obviously, a state election, and I'm sure my fellow speakers will be able to contribute also on this better. But the state elections are relatively easier because number of variables are lesser, uh, and the magnitude of the challenge with what you are handling is also lesser. So that gives us some relief from the mega complexities that we have. But like Girish said, that there is a large amount of art involved in this, definitely, and that art is applicable for the state elections as well. It's not only at the central level. Maybe again the magnitude will be higher at a central level and relatively lower on the state.
Yeah.
Right. If
Also, the
I,
fact that we don't have a concept of uniform swing center. You know, in UK, you can do a national sample and then apply that uniform swing of plus or minus that Labour or Tories are losing or gaining across all the seats, in that way, and that would work. The problem with Indian heterogeneity is that you cannot apply Tamil Nadu swing on Bengal, Bengal swing on Maharashtra. Forget about that. You cannot apply one seat of Bengal seats on another seat of Bengal as well. So that is an enormous, huge challenge to cover. It's pretty much next to impossible kind of thing. If you from the Puritan research perspective, if you try to look at. So yeah, when you are dealing with too many states, too many things, then obviously in US, for example, 50, there are total 50 states sometimes. Out of 50, 40 actually nobody polls. That's the funny part of it. 95% of the polling in US actually happens in only the 10 swing states. The rest of the 40 states are so damn clear, this red or blue, that nobody opts for polling there. That's ironical. It's one of those kind of things. But the good part of that is that those swing states, they get so damn scrutinized at the county level in terms of data collection, that their resources are much more focused. They just throw in everything in there. And then there are so many political pollsters as well. And by the way, unlike India, they are just, I think, multiple times over political strategists are there, because every politician who is a serious politician always carries and builds the data. Builds the campaign on the data sets. that is also a kind of political difference in the political culture, I would say, which is nascent in India. It's gaining, but it has a bright future. It does have a bright future, and we know we need more people who can do this in India. But we also need more youngsters in terms of politicians who understand the data, who are data centric, who want to build up a career in politics based on solid research, not just subjective side of politics as the politicians of India are also used to.
So if I can just come on, Amitabh, before I
Yes,
can
yes,
move to
yes,
the other topic, and just coming on this diversity part of it, and I will try to give both sides of the story in that sense, right? So one side is basically what we have seen is that the elements of any election remain the same. And those elements are people, political parties or the leader, and the needs of a common man. Now, what happens is whether it's a state election of a UP versus a state election of Andhra Pradesh, or whether it's a municipal election or state election or national election. I mean, voters have become very intelligent with technology coming. Earlier, I will come to that topic later on, but so voters are informed on what elections are for and what to expect. So if it's a municipal election, they know that, okay, they have to see the drainage system, someone who can take care of the drainage system, someone who can take care of the cleanliness of the city. When it comes to state, whether road, electricity, water, law, order is taken care of. When it comes to national, inflation, unemployment policies, these factors become important. So one side is the fundamentals or the elements of any election happening in any state remain the same person in that sense. And therefore, even before we go to any exit poll for any constituency, what we do is we map the constituency and we try to understand what are the local issues which are at play. These issues can be caste, social factors, whatever, but understanding what are the needs which are there and which is going to drive a voting behavior. So that is one side of the story where the fundamentals remain the same. Having said that, it's a diverse country. And I will just give you an example, right? So, for example, there was one or two states where we got the predictions wrong, which was Tamil Nadu, I guess in 2016, and then West Bengal, Bihar, which was in 2019. What happened is basically there we could not estimate the right male-female voting percentage in that sense. What happened is that, if I just to give you a Tamil Nadu example in that sense, what we had done is that we had given DMK a 120, 140 seat out of 230 seats. AIDMK, we had got about 89, 90 to 100 seats, and rest was the opposition in that sense. And what happened was totally the opposite. AIDMK won about 135 seats and DMK won about 90 odd seats in that sense. And when we went to the reason for that, the reason was that 88% of the respondents in our sample were male and 12% were only females. But the voting percentage was far higher in females, and the percentage of females which voted for AIDMK was far higher in that sense. And that gave the predictions wrong. Therefore, all these things.
Yeah, so you were asking, I was going to ask the next question is that, what are the challenges? And hence, I think you answered that challenges. So maybe, Yashwant, I'll ask you, what are the challenges which present itself when you do political polling in India?
Well, I will just add to the challenge which Girish said that they faced, and in Tamil Nadu, I mean, fortunately, I would say just fortunately, we got the last 4 elections correct. But why fortunately, I can tell you in that way, because yes, these problems, what Girish is mentioning, the same problem, Girish, happened with us in Madhya Pradesh, where Pradeep was saying that, there is a female surge for BJP, and we were unable to map that. We were unable to map that kind of how much, to which extent the female surge will be there, that it will overturn the 15 years of incumbency in that way. But Tamil Nadu, what happened was, I will just add to the layer of the challenges which Girish just mentioned, not just the male female. We found a very unique pattern in Tamil Nadu in that election, Girish, that there was Chennai floods, and after the flood, there was a anger against Jayalalitha government within the greater Chennai region. But we could not find that anger outside the Chennai region at all. And because the entire media narrative and everything was capital centric, so the narrative that was spreading around was as if the government is gone case, So the moment we split the data in two different sets, that okay, let's do a two zones kind of thing. Forget about the traditional zoning of Tamil Nadu. Let's do a flood zone and let's do a non-flood zone. That is where we discovered that okay, this anger is only very, very limited thing. So AI Amma is going to lose big number of seats in Chennai, but outside Chennai, she's just easy, calm, and good. So overall number she will pull through, and that's the kind of layering which is actually not even traditional. You know, which kind of traditional layering tells you there should be a zone called a flood zone? I mean, do you know where the flood will happen and how quickly it will happen and how regularly it will happen? These are the things on the go that you have to deal with them, because because of the floods or the droughts or all the natural and man-made disasters also comes into the adds to the problem of data collection. That is another thing. Forget about male female in terms of whether getting on the data. Female researchers on the ground, you know how difficult it is to get. When you are planning a field trip for a researcher team, if you are planning that okay, they should just para drop and come back in the same evening, because in that remote site, number one, there is no lodging available, there is no security available. The female researchers that you are sending, their security, you are morally and each possible way, you are responsible for their security and safety. So what happens? Either you are sending a male and female researcher together and bringing them back in the evening, or you are sending a team of only male researchers who can just stay there, share the room, and that decreases the cost of conducting the field work, blah, 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 blah. Otherwise, you end up with very, very low female response rate, because as Girish mentioned, it is how likely it is in our countryside that any male stranger would go and knock on a door and get to talk to the female of the household. Don't even try it. Don't even try it. I'm telling you, at least not in the north of India. Don't try it. So these are the things which is very, very difficult to explain in a layman term to any professor in the West. That okay, you are not going to get 48% female respondents. It's next to impossible. Now, same even bigger layer is of the minorities, Amita. Response rate of the minorities, unless you are sending the same faith researchers in those areas, the response rate goes for a toss. These are difficult times, and these are not that these are the difficult times that last 10 years have produced. These have always been there. It's not something that has been there. These kind of issues or the fault lines in the societies on the ground, one has to deal with them. And they have to deal with them because a person belonging to X faith going to a Y faith respondent asking which toothpaste you are going to use, fair, easy, done, no problem. Asking which party you are going to vote, try it. These are sensitive things and particularly in the sensitive areas which have a history of conflicts, which have a history of friction, social friction. And I'm not talking about Hindu-Muslim equation. No, not just that. The caste-oriented frictions at the village level are so deep, and so intense that one has to weave around that in order to ask those kind of questions. So these are not the issues which a normal market research study will face, but these are the issues which any socio-economic political research will certainly face.
So one question, I have actually two questions. One is, what is the role of social media, internet plays, or does it play a role in voting behavior. So Parijat, maybe I'll ask you, does it happen in India and
Yeah,
maybe in the West?
havoc. And it's a huge role social media per se, and social media play. Unfortunately, so far, we see more negative than positive. It has a uh, uh, power to play a positive role as well as the negative role. But unfortunately, that's the way it is, and that's pretty much global. Maybe a bit more stronger in our country. Uh, but social media matters because the people are getting impressions, they're framing, perceptions, and for that individual, the perception is the reality. And even if it is through a fake message or something like that, which are rampant on the social. Now, whose responsibility it is? We can't just, hold maybe the social media companies, and they have to check it, each and every post and all. Well, that's impossible. But maybe media has a bigger role to play because there a lot is human driven and not automated. Uh, Even to the extent that there had been cases where our predictions has gone wrong because of the night before there had been a social media post which has gone rounds, gone viral. And this is not only India. I mean, we have at least identified some 30 different cases in USA, in Europe, Australia. So things are, like that. Well, we have maybe a simplified version of it the night before. Who is providing the power to that person? Maybe that's also another way of influencing the voters. Now, coming to social media and media, uh, there are certain, self-restraint. There are certain behavioral aspects which we can be a little more careful about. I think will make this entire context of politics and political research more sane and more cleaner.
If I can just add a small point on
Yes,
this, basically
yes,
the power of social media, right? If you're talking about the power of social media, why are we seeing so much of decisive votes in India in the last 10 years, 15 years? That is because of the power of social media. Earlier, we used to see split votes in that sense. I mean, such much of decisiveness has happened because of social media, because people are able to make consensus because of technology, because of Facebook, WhatsApp. People are speaking to each other, and they have a consensus in that. It's like any consumer journey which happens, right? There is a need recognition, then you evaluation of alternatives. If you're buying a car in your household, you speak to your wife, you speak to your child, you build a consensus, and then you go and buy the car. That is what social media is doing when it comes to voting. Right? People are building consensus based on whatever the needs which are there, the agendas, the manifestos of political parties, and then casting the votes. And that is one of the reasons, as I said, because of the decisiveness of votes which we see.
great. And so one last question, and as in we are about to ending. So what do you think should a person, if he or she wants to, make a career in psephology, what kind of qualification, what kind of expertise the person needs to get into the psephology part of the market research? Parijat, maybe you have been a market researcher and a psephologist, so.
Yeah, if you like research, the core of research, then you may actually be interested in different aspects of research, and psychology happens to be that. But psychology is more challenging than most of the other types of research because there are far more number of moving parts that you need to handle, the variables that you need to handle. But if you like it, then I don't think qualification matters. I mean, you have one example in front of you. I am a mining engineer by training. So if I can like it and then make a career here in research industry, why not others who may be even more qualified than me? All depends on whether you like it, and if you like it, there is a career. And one thing we can guarantee, this is damn interesting.
So one
So
question I have in my mind, and I'll ask Yashwant and maybe Girish also, and that would be my last question, is define a day of exit poll. day it is happening, what happens since morning till evening, whatever, when you are coming out with the seat numbers? Anyone? Yashwant, if you can talk. Hello.
I think Yashwant's connection had some trouble. He
Should I go first or?
Yeah, so Girish, you can talk about it.
I missed you. I lost you a bit in midway, but yeah. So, okay. So you basically asked, define the day of the exit poll. Is that right?
Yes.
I mean, okay. All right. So the day of the exit poll is like selecting the random polling booths where your researcher has to be there right before polling starts, and once the polling starts, has to start picking up one set random number of voter that is coming out from the booth to start, and then start interviewing every 5th, 10th, 20th, whichever the sequence of randomization you have decided in your model, and then continue the interviewing till the polling station is closed, which, by the way, is 3 to 5 hours more than what the official time you get in, because when the polling, they say polling is closed at 5 or 6. Polling is closed means generally, Amitabh, that no new voter would be allowed to vote, but people who are standing on the line, they are given purchase or the slips by the election commission that because they are in the line, they would be allowed to vote until the point of time that the last voter actually comes out. Till that point of time, the polling is continuing, and that happens to be sometimes even as late as 9 or 10 in the evening, by the time that happens. But they interview either on the data sheet, or they interview using their handhelds, whichever way you look at it. The data sheets users, they have to transmit the data, either they click or they are transmitting the data on the telephone via the carry center, or if the place is in a very good place to use the data network, then they can use it and directly punch in that. That gets processed, analyzed in the central servers. You do the calculations, and of course, you need to handle the zillion calls that come your way all through the day, asking kya ho raha hai. So basically, it's another headache, because you can switch off the phone, but obviously the networks or the clients who have commissioned you, they do call how it's going, where it's going. And then sometimes, or majority more often than not, 6 o'clock when the closes and election commission says you can go on air at 6:30. Every channel under the sun wants to go it first and wants to say that we have done it, without realizing that the number that they are airing at that point of time are till 4 o'clock, because that much time of processing and analysis is required. And that's where it goes on. So it's a hands-on process. Sometimes when you get a fair share of the lead in vote share, you are okay, that okay, till 4 o'clock we got it. And unless something changes between 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock in the data that is collected after that, there is no big difference. But sometimes when the contest is really close, that's where problem happens. That's where the overtly the pressure of going on air by the networks, that
I think
takes.
thanks Yashwant, thanks Girish, thanks Parijat. I think we are end of, we could talk another hour on this, but unfortunately we are end of our webinar time. Thanks a lot for taking out time and discussing this. It was invaluable for me, at least. I hope the other people attending this have also got a good insights into the art of Psephology, art, science, and the magic of Psephology. Thanks a
Thank
lot,
you.
everyone.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.